In terms of Lynchburg history, the 9th Street Bridge, this was the main crossroads of commerce 150, 200 years ago.
Yeah, where we're standing was the hub of activity for Lynchburg, really going back to the founding of the city, since the Lynches placed their rope ferry very close to where we're standing today. So this was the crossing of the James, one of the few that you had in Central Virginia. And then after the Lynches closed the ferry, they built a toll bridge here, which then served the community. So it's been a transportation hub really since the 1750s.
Also spanned the canal that came through here. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, the James River and Kanawha Canal actually goes back to George Washington's day. He and other early leaders always had a plan to link the interior of the country with the tidal ports. And the James River was navigable for large vessels as far as Richmond. So then the question became, how do you get from Richmond upstream? So they decided to build a canal. And by 1840, the canal had actually reached from Richmond to Lynchburg, to this spot. And Lynchburg was then connected globally, tobacco and other goods downstream, and everything from all over the globe, from Irish linen to French wines, clothing, tools, manufacturing. It all came up and down the river. And the canal was a big improvement over trying to run the rapids and falls in the smaller boats. From about 1840 to 1880, that was the heyday of the canal. And in the early 1850s, the two railroads actually operated from here too. So at one point, about where we're standing, there was a railroad station serving two railroads and the canal. So it was quite the scene.
The railroads eventually put the canal out of business.
Yeah, the expense of the canal, every time it flooded, it washed out and the railroads were turning out to be more feasible financially, and also from a maintenance standpoint, it were much faster. I remember reading an article where early railroads reached 18 miles an hour and people were just in shock. And the canal boats probably did more like 3 or 4. So between that, the canal eventually sells all of the right-of-way to the railroads, but part of Lynchburg's industry still needed the canal water that flowed through here to operate. So for a time, there was actually still canal water going through here, but not for travel. It was for commerce. And at one point, they actually had a railroad track and water flowing under this 9th Street Bridge.
Wow. And that's hard to believe now when you look at it. It's just a very shallow depth, underneath that bridge, and to imagine what used to be here.
Yeah, and there have been hotels here, different railroad depots, any number of infrastructure projects of sewer and water, just a place of really intense activity, and that's part of what we're seeing in this canal dig with all the fill and broken bricks and beer bottles and earlier implements. It's just a lot of human use over time.
Talk a little bit about what's happening here today. Whose idea was it to sort of dig down and look for remnants of the canal and the footpath?
Well, of this canal that means so much in Lynchburg history, there's very little tangible remain of it left. Where we are, the bridge was built in 1839, and that's the most visible and significant part of the canal. There's some abutments in Blackwater Creek that carried the aqueduct over just to my left, and then a little bit of the canal bed that's here behind me. But it's an important part of the history, and knowing that the city was doing this huge CSO project, it gave us an opportunity to explore and see what was there, what remains of it. We've been able to salvage some wonderful building materials in these canal wall stones that were placed here by hand about 1839. What we're doing today is we're doing a test dig to see where the towpath came under the bridge. And we're down probably 10 feet at this point, and we may have hit either a canal wall or some portion of the towpath, but we don't know that for sure. We're still in progress.
It'll get filled in right after, basically, or material?
This is an exploratory dig, so once this is done today, they'll cover it back up, and then our archaeologists who are on site will help interpret the data and what we've seen, and we'll learn more about that important part of our heritage.
This adds to the story, I guess, of downtown Lynchburg.
Oh, very much so.
And without, there's, I guess some drawings, some maybe a couple photos, but there's not a whole lot of history there to draw upon. So you need to do sort of digs like this, or
right. Photography generally becomes popular and generally available about 1840. This bridge is already standing by 1839. So photography's in its infancy. And when you think about it, a canal, even though it was a wonderful thing, it wasn't something that attracted a lot of artist interest. We've got photographs that start more like the 1880s and come forward when the actual freight boats and packet boats are no longer here. So early records or early visual records of what was here are very scarce. So we try to fill in between the art, the later photographs, the archaeology, and the written documents. That's how we put the story together.
And you couldn't have done this work until after the interceptor work was finished.
Right. The contractor needed to finish and clear the site. So this work is being done. The Water Resources Department has generously loaned a backhoe. We have 2 archaeologists who are helping monitor the project. And then we have folks from the Virginia Canals and Navigation Society here offering their input and expertise. So got a great group here today.
Okay. There's also that very iconic painting of Stonewall Jackson's body being carried by a canal boat underneath this bridge, and that really, that you can use this work to sort of add to that story, I would imagine.
Right. Artist Mort Kunstler, of course, he had to work with what he could see, so he did a very good replication of what is here now and interpreted as it might have been. So this may add to that story, but he painted what was here, not today, not necessarily what was here then, but it would have been close.
Yeah. As an historian, is it exciting to be able to literally dig up a little bit more information on what's down here?
Yeah, being a history guy, I love what comes out from under the soil. The pottery shards and old tools and early bricks. I've spent a long time doing this, so they actually help illuminate what I think I know about Lynchburg history.
And we went down, what? Was that hole 12, 15 feet?
Probably at least.
And there was no sign yet of the towpath, which would have been right below that.
No, that's why I was thinking about the only place that might actually be preserved. It's probably going to be somewhere right up next to the...
All the construction was on the other side.
Yeah.
Exactly. That towpath would have been deep enough, certainly, that the horse's ears wouldn't be bothered by this arch.
Yeah.
It's at least that deep.
Yeah.
And then it would have turned around to this area because they needed to.
And it wasn't, which side of this was the
towpath was on this side.
But there was a turner, as what do we call it, a basin, turning basin? I think that was somewhere here.
Yeah.
I think that was here.
Maybe like this.
Yeah.
They don't know. So this
It's big enough for them to flip, to turn the...
Well, I don't think there's any wider here. The wider here is up there. I think it's the same width. Towpath for another mile.
I was wondering if they could add any spaces to pull over so that they can still have traffic and still yet have
They did that on all
to unload.
Yeah.
Something
We got
bigger.
pieces of timber, pieces of brick.
Let's see.
Oh well.
That's pretty
Hey.
Yes.
Oh.
Sweet.
something right there, ain't it?
Yeah.
Everybody gasping. Yeah, I don't know. Concrete. Big promising, huh?
I don't know, it may be a big rock. I was hoping for a natural formation.
I mean, it could be part of it, though,
Oh yeah. Well, that's the right size to have for the wall.
certainly, for the top of
And
it.
like these stones here.
So basically, that would be a retainer wall back with the path on this side. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Going on, there seems to be something going on back closer toward you. We probably want to leave those rocks all in place and try to clean on top of them.
This side and back this way?
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting bigger rocks here and here. And there's a big one down here, so let's just see if we can maybe clean that side and some of the loose.
And we might expect the towpath to have proceeded around to this side.
Yeah, it may turn there. Maybe we've got a corner or something.
So Randy, from an archaeologist standpoint, what do y'all think you found or learned this morning?
Well, we didn't find it where we thought we would find the remains of the towpath, but it looks like there's a possibility anyway that it could have been elevated on piers through here. We did find a large wooden pier, and if not, then we've got part of like a dock system or some other shoring that went through later on, and we've got a lot of unconsolidated fill all the way down to the bottom, so it's pretty well disturbed.
This is stuff that's been done over the centuries, really, over the decades, and
Yeah, and a lot of it,
times.
a lot of it recently, because we found that near the bottom in some places we had some silt fence and we had some plastic, and so this has been torn up in the 20th, maybe even 21st century.
Still worthwhile, you feel?
Yeah, I think so, because you don't know until you dig, and now we know we can hypothesize that it may have been elevated on a wooden platform under the bridge, and in the future, maybe we can check someplace else or find another source, documentary record of it or something like that. So I think it was worthwhile.
It's possible that the stones you might have expected to find had already been removed at one point.
That's right. Yeah, those stones were valuable for use in other structures, and the railroad, we know the railroad appropriated a lot of the old canal stones for their structures, and other people would have used them. So it's possible that they were salvaged out of here and just kind of disappeared before it got filled in.
180-year-old bridge probably needs a lot of work after all these years. What needs to happen to it?
Believe it or not, it's not as much work as you think. With any bridge with age to it, you do need some minor to major rehabilitation, but in this case, the structure's actually held up fairly well. It's in this case, with this particular structure, we're having to do some mortar joint repair and some actually block replacements, if you will. It's the blocks itself, the original stone, along with we're trying to eliminate the presence of moisture. In doing so, we're going to have to take off the deck, and then we're going to have to do some work up above and below the structure to try to eliminate that moisture mitigation. That's the major problem that's going on with this bridge in particular. Most bridges in particular, it's same issue. It's moisture mitigation. So that's kind of what we're doing here on this structure.
So basically the rain comes down the hill, seeps into that deck, and does all kinds of damage underneath.
It does. Winters here are cold, and then you have calciums from the salts during snow removal processes. That's a lot of the major issues that's going on. Water, you're correct. It penetrates through the deck. It gets down in the mortar joints. Deteriorates over time. The stones become loose, so we just need to go back and do a little work to kind of fix that.
Is part of the problem you're not quite sure what you're going to find once you take that deck off?
That is part of the problem. We're not really sure. I mean, as you said, it's quite an old structure, so I know we've done some patches or repairs to some others. Infrastructure within the bridge itself, but in this case, we're really not sure what we're going to get into till we get that deck off.
Is there a certain, weight limit that you want to have it rated to by the time you're done?
No, actually, believe it or not, we have done a load rating analysis on this structure, and there is no load rating limitations for this particular bridge. So it'll be the same. It'll be HS20 load rating, which is, it'll handle larger trucks, if you will.
Sure. And beyond 180 years of travel back and forth across it, it's also taken a beating over the past couple of years with a lot of heavy construction equipment coming down over here.
It certainly doesn't help the structure, but it doesn't. It hasn't what you called necessarily done any further damage than already the normal routine daily wear.
So, is it kind of a neat feeling, I guess, knowing that you're working on a building, or rather a structure of this age?
Oh, it's always quite neat. You bringing in the historical aspect of the bridge. And although, we're doing work to it, you do gain a sense of the history that is involved, that was part of the canal, that this structure actually was present during that era, during that time frame in history, and that you're doing your part to ensure that that structure is maintains its integrity for future generations to come.
How important is it to put it back much the same way that it was?
Very important. That was a part of this project that when we laid it out, we wanted to make sure that the integrity and the history of the part of this structure was maintained throughout.
And what do you need to do to make that happen?
We're having some preliminary submittals and some making sure that the contractor and the subs are equipped and have the knowledge and the skills to make sure that they do that and keep the integrity there of the historical part of it.
So these are folks who have worked with this kind of stuff
Yes,
before?
correct.
Okay. All right. And the other aspect of this is that once you close this off, you will all have already built a temporary bridge coming across the old canal into the depot parking lot.
That's correct. We're doing that to maintain the traffic to the lower basin area below Amazement Square and the depot, and the detour is simply just to do that, to detour the traffic around while we're doing the work to the bridge itself and the surrounding area, and then once that's done, we'll take that temporary road back out of service.
And parking, with everything that's going on down here, parking is certainly always the question. You're really not losing that many spaces?
We're probably, I would say, around 13 to 15 spots when it's all said and done. We've got a rough idea, but you don't really know until you get into it and when you're actually having the detour put in and you're having to eliminate a few of the spots. But in doing that, we were anticipating this, and part of the one of the other city projects that we had going on with Lot M, we did add additional parking that should deter or defer from this to that. So the parking, yes, in a sense, is being lost due to the detour, but we've gained some back with Lot N, which is basically adjacent to the depot.
In timetable, it's about 4 months, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
This is a 120-day project with a 60-day window to actually close the street itself, which is 9th Street.
So hopefully a very minimal interruption to daily routine down here.
We have strived to make sure that we maintain minimal disruption to the public, the traveling public in front of Depot and Amazement Square. Thus, we put in the strict restrictions of the time frame.